Welcome to DCS Global. Ukrainian UAVs launched a major attack on Russia's Kanskaya airbase in Adygea, destroying multiple aircraft and causing large fires. This escalation highlights Ukraine's growing ability to strike within Russian territory using domestically produced UAVs. As the war drags on, Russia faces mounting challenges in defending its military assets. Let's move on to the details. The Russian Air Force has woken up to a nightmarish morning. A large number of Ukrainian UAVs, which took action in the early hours of Thursday, destroyed the Kanskaya military airbase in the Adygea region of Russia. After the attack, which resulted in the destruction of a large number of Russian warplanes, huge fires and explosions occurred in the region. During the last period of the Russia-Ukraine war, which has been going on for more than 2 years, unmanned aerial vehicles began to rewrite the fate of the battles. As you may remember, the Ukrainian army has been supplying UAVs from the US-led Western Bloc countries for a long time during the war. However, allowing the defense-oriented use of these UAVs only greatly limited the air attack capability of the Ukrainian army. At this point, the Kiev administration, which has started to make serious investments in the local defense industry and focus on domestic UAV production, has proved to the whole world that these studies are progressing in an extremely positive way by 2024. The Ukrainian Defense Forces, which began mass-producing unmanned aerial vehicles that provide them with serious advantages and capabilities during airstrikes, such as the Palyanitsia model attack UAVs, dealt critical blows to the military infrastructure inside Russia through these domestic weapons in the second half of this year. At this point, although the Kremlin administration is also concentrating on airstrikes against Ukraine using Shahed model unmanned aerial vehicles, the failure of Russian forces to identify strategic targets has given Kiev a permanent superiority in the airspace. The recent attack on the military airbase located in the Russian region of Adygea showed the whole world how determined Ukraine is to advance the war within Russian territory. Thursday, October 10th, very early in the morning, the Ukrainian Military Intelligence HUR and the Ukrainian Security Service SBU organized a joint operation, adding another one to Moscow's nightmares. The attack, which used dozens of attack-type unmanned aerial vehicles, targeted the Kanskaya military airbase located in Russia's Adygea region. The facility, which houses the 272nd Polotsk Aviation Training Base, affiliated to the Krasnodar Higher Military Aviation School, was used by the Russian Air Force to refuel fighter jets and organize missile and bomb attacks on Ukrainian territory. For this reason, there were 12 Su-34 fighter bombers, 2 Diamond Da-42 reconnaissance aircraft, 37 L-39 training jets, 4 Su-35S fighter jets, and 2 Mi-8 attack helicopters at the time of the attack at the airbase, where a large number of Russian warplanes and attack helicopters were already deployed. Ukrainian Military Intelligence HUR described this operation they organized as part of a wide-ranging effort aimed at eliminating Russia's military potential. The first post confirming the attack during the night hours came from the Telegram channel named Astra. After the attack, which led to huge explosions and fires near the airbase, a large number of residents around the Adygea region and Telegram channels linked to the Russian security services also shared written and video about the Ukrainian UAV attacks. Adygea Prime Minister Murat Kumpilov, who confirmed that there was a drone attack on the outskirts of Maykop, refrained from making a statement about the Kanskaya military airbase. However, when NASA confirmed that a fire had occurred near a military airbase based on fire monitoring data, the Russian authorities' effort to hide the crisis was completely overturned. It is believed that the source of the fire was the fuel and oil tanks located very close to the runway of the airbase. M.T. Anderson, a researcher at OSINT, an open-source intelligence agency, pointed out that there are aircraft fuel tanks and bomb depots in this area. Thursday, October 10th, the Russian Ministry of Defense, which as always after many shares, claims and theories were put forward about the ongoing crisis, but felt the need to explain, said that 92 Ukrainian UAVs were destroyed during the night, claiming that 47 of these unmanned aerial vehicles were shot down in the Krasnodar airspace surrounding the Adygea region. Russian officials said that other Ukrainian UAVs targeted regions such as Kursk, Rostov, Bryansk, and Crimea. In another statement about the attack on the Kanskaya military airbase, located about 400 kilometers from the front line in eastern Ukraine, Ukrainian Military Intelligence HUR said, "We are expanding our ability to attack deep into enemy territory, and Russian military facilities are being attacked by Ukrainian-made unmanned aerial vehicles more every day than the last. This is just the beginning." The Ukrainian Defense Forces targeted the Kanskaya Air Base, said officials of the Ukrainian General Staff, who shared details about the operation via the official Telegram channel. Thursday, October 10th at night, there was a big fire at the military air base in the Adygea region of the Russian Federation. The point where the attack was concentrated was an ammunition depot at a military facility. It was seen that the enemy air defense system was working in the target area, and a fire occurred. Detailed information about the casualties at the air base where the Su-34 and Su-27 fighter jets are located will be revealed. The operation was carried out by the Security Service of Ukraine (SBU), the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine (HUR), and Special Operations Forces and vehicles of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The joint combat work of all components of the defense forces on the important goals of the armed forces of the Russian Federation will continue. As a result of the attack, which led to large explosions and fires, it is claimed that a large number of fighter jets registered in the Russian Air Force inventory were destroyed. These cross-border operations organized by Ukraine against Russia using domestic weapons and the retaliatory moves they have launched through the defense line on the active battlefield are leading to a much bigger crisis for the Kremlin every day. Thursday, October 10th, again, in the morning hours of the Ukrainian General Staff published a critical report on the casualties of the Russian army. Together with this report shows that Russia has almost no chance of continuing the war. In the aforementioned report, Ukrainian officials stated that since the full-scale war began on February 24, 2022, the armed forces of the Russian Federation have lost 665,200 soldiers. This number includes 1080 Russian soldiers who were neutralized on Wednesday, October 9th, it was stated. Now, the Russian army, which has a daily loss of more than 1,000 soldiers and suffers an average of more than 30,000 manpower casualties within a month, will not even be able to find soldiers to defend its border regions, let alone continue offensive attempts if the process continues like this. In the continuation of the same report, Ukrainian General Staff officials, who also shared data on the inventory loss of the Russian army, stated that the armed forces of the Russian Federation have lost 8 Bin 945 tanks, 17 Bin 765 armored combat vehicles, 26 Bin 314 vehicles and fuel tanks, 19 Bin 263 artillery systems, 225 multi-barrel rocket launcher systems, 976 air defense systems, 369 aircraft, 328 helicopters, 16 Bin 767 unmanned aerial vehicles, 28 ships and boats, and a submarine since the first day of the war. As you may recall, Russian President Vladimir Putin guaranteed that this war would be won in just a few months during his statement dated February 24, 2022, when he ignited the fuse of the unjustified invasion attempt on Ukrainian territory. The Russian leader, who insisted that the Russian army would suffer minimal casualties in this process, assured that it was impossible for the war to make its impact felt on Russian territory. Looking at today, it can be easily said that Putin's promises are just lies chosen to distract the people in the army. However, the tolerance of the Russian people towards this situation and the crisis caused by the war has completely exhausted. According to reports shared by the independent opinion research company Chronicles in September, 49% of the Russian people demand that this war end and the army withdraw to Russia before the goals set by the Kremlin are achieved. This figure was 40% before the Ukrainian army's cross-border operations became widespread. However, the significant military, political, and economic feeling of the war on Russian soil has led to the exhaustion of the Russian people's trust and patience with Putin. Ukraine's cyber attacks have left Russia vulnerable once again. Employees of the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine, KUR, organized a simultaneous cyber attack on multiple websites connected with the supply lines and military logistics network of the Russian army. Ukraine, which has captured detailed information about the instantaneous mobility of the Russian army on the battlefield, in addition to the data on the logistics infrastructure, has added another one to the nightmares of the Moscow administration. The developments in the recent period of the Russia-Ukraine war, which has been going on for more than 2 years, clearly show that both sides want to achieve an early victory by implementing an offensive war strategy. In this process, the war, in which the balances completely changed immediately after the appointment of Colonel General Oleksandr Syrsky as the chief of the Ukrainian General Staff, began to feel its impact on Russian territory as of the second half of 2024. The Moscow administration, still unable to get over the shock of this sudden and unexpected move by the Ukrainian army, which has continued to make progress in the ground operation launched by Russia against the Kursk region since August 6th, is trying to make Kiev back down through intensive airstrikes and offensive attempts targeting the east of Ukraine. However, the developments in the first week of October prove that the war is flaring up not only on the battlefield, but also on cyber lines, and Kiev is getting much bigger trumps every day at this point. The early hours of Friday, October 4th, a critical announcement came from the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine, HUR. The details stated in the continuation of the announcement, which stated that as a result of intensive efforts by employees of the Ukrainian intelligence service, a cyber attack was carried out on multiple websites directly connected with the supply lines of the Russian army, showed the extent of the crisis Moscow is facing to the whole world. As a result of the operation directed by the hacker team affiliated with HUR, a large amount of data on the movements of military personnel of the Russian army fell into the hands of Kiev. At this point, the Ukrainian hacker group's first target point is known to provide equipment and uniforms to the Russian armed forces, Okrug.ru. It's been the site. As a result of the cyber attack on this site, the Ukrainian team managed to cause a great deal of damage to both the logistics infrastructure activities of the Russian army, but also gained access to operationally critical information, such as the locations of the Russian army on the active battlefield. Another site targeted by the cyber attack was Vash Hotel. Along with the attack on this site, organizing accommodation reservations of the occupying Russian forces inside the territory of Ukraine, HUR employees who leaked a critical data network related to the back front line finally turned their attention to the site called GhostPattern. Along with the site where technical military intelligence data is stored, a major blow has been dealt to the internet networks that provide support to the occupying Russian forces. Employees of the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine, who placed images via business cards on these websites after the cyber attack, seem to continue to give Moscow a nightmare throughout October. HUR employees, who targeted banking services in Russia by signing a similar cyber attack on October 2nd, carried out simultaneous attacks on Alpha Bank, Otkriti Bank, and telecommunications operator Restelecom, which are known to provide financial support for Russia's full-scale unjustified invasion of Ukrainian territory. As a result of the cyber attack, it was stated that fast pay systems, mobile applications, and internet banking activities of the mentioned enterprises were stopped globally. Russian companies which made statements acknowledging the crisis nevertheless did not make any statements about the source of the current problems and when the problems will be fixed and the services will start operating. The fact that the organizations whose support is needed for the continuity of the invasion attempt, which has already caused a huge financial loss for the Moscow administration, have lost all their areas of activity as a result of cyber attacks by Ukrainian hacker groups, shows that Kiev's multifaceted war strategy will cause Putin even bigger problems in the future. The intensification of Ukraine's struggle in the cyber field coincides with the Kursk operation, which began in August. As you may recall, Russian President Vladimir Putin and his team tried to discredit Kiev's move by stating that Ukraine's Kursk operation was not a remarkable development and that the Russian military continues to make progress deep into Ukraine. However, these efforts of the Moscow administration, which constantly publishes propaganda messages in order to control the growing anger of the Russian people, were completely disrupted on August 22nd by employees of the Ukrainian Main Intelligence Directorate HUR. Employees of HUR who organized a cyber attack on the servers of the Russian television company, which is a kind of center of propaganda broadcasts of Putin and his team. Broadcast videos showing the realities of the war in Ukraine on this television channel, expressing to the Russian people that they had been deceived by the government. Just 2 weeks later, on September 6th, KUR launched another joint cyber attack with a Ukrainian hacker group called VO Team, completely destroying at least 18 servers in Russia, along with the data inside them. Monday, September 23rd, however, was the biggest move that deeply shook Russia's military logistics infrastructure and financial activities in this whole process. As a result of this attack, which completely disabled the activities of two major banks affiliated to the Russian Federation, Rosalkazbank and Moscow Credit Bank, internet banking in Russia had to stop completely. During their statement on the same day, her officials said, "These actions do not have a set deadline. The Russian financial system will continue to face disruptions until the last occupier leaves the territory of Ukraine. The Russians should understand that every financial institution is a legitimate target for our security and defense forces, because they all contribute to the financing of the occupying army. The damage caused by the Ukrainian authorities to the internet infrastructure in Russia over the past 3 months, which the Ukrainian authorities have stated that they will evaluate the data they have seized as a result of these cyber attacks in order to meet the needs of the Ukrainian armed forces, is seriously changing the fate of the war. Especially in the last month, the damage caused to the military inventory of the Russian army, and the most basic reason for the manpower crisis facing Moscow, is that Ukraine has completely gained the upper hand in the intelligence field. Friday, October 4th, according to the data shared by the Ukrainian General Staff, the armed forces of Russia, since February 24, 2022, when the decision of a full-scale invasion was announced, lost 6,579 soldiers. The Moscow administration, whose average daily manpower loss is over 1,000, cannot get the desired result from the voluntary conscription incentive program due to recent failures and erroneous decisions they have made. At this point, Putin, who has reactivated the repressive and authoritarian management approach, has activated a new mobilization decision that will continue until the end of December. This decision, which will lead to the forced recruitment of 133,000 male Russian citizens into the army, was met with anger and reaction by the vast majority of the Russian people. Already in the period leading up to July, 150,000 male Russian citizens had been forced to join the army in a similar way. If it is determined that the citizens who need to apply for military service within the scope of the mobilization decision have not reached the military service branches, the judicial process is initiated with a request for a prison sentence of up to 2 years. This irrational insistence of the Russian leader and his team, who are trying to make the people pay for their own failure and do not agree to end this unfair invasion attempt launched for their personal interest with a defeat, is leading to Russia's rapid loss of military power. Friday, October 4th, the Ukrainian General Staff shared the report according to the Russian Armed Forces: 8 908 tanks, 17 627 armored combat vehicles, 25 820 vehicles and fuel tanks, 18 965 artillery systems, 212 multi-barrel rocket launcher systems, 965 air defense systems, 368 aircraft, 328 helicopter, 16 494 unmanned aerial vehicles, 28 ships and boats, and a submarine lost during the war. In the future, the Russian armed forces, which are facing the danger of not being able to find manpower and military inventory, even to ensure their own border security, let alone to continue offensive attempts, are experiencing the worst period in their history under the leadership of Putin. But the growing reaction and anger of the public and the military may make the Russian leader abandon his insistence on this war to secure the throne. The occupying Russian forces regret that they stepped into Kherson and Donetsk. The Ukrainian Defense Forces, which managed to bring the Russian forces to the center of the trap by gradually withdrawing, launched a unique revenge attack by deploying FPV model kamikaze drones. The operation images shared by the Ukrainian army, which managed to destroy the Russian Grad multi-barrel rocket launcher systems deployed by Russian forces in both regions, have added another one to Moscow's nightmares. The Russia-Ukraine war, which has been going on for more than 2 years, has now started to turn into a complete disaster for Russia. After the appointment of Colonel General Oleksandr Syrsky as Chief of General Staff, the Ukrainian army, which has started to organize much more successful counterattacks on the defense line and to focus on cross-border operations, is taking revenge very heavily for the unfair invasion attempt they have been subjected to for more than 2 years. The sudden and effective interventions of the Ukrainian army which is currently continuing to make progress in Russia's Kursk Oblast and moving the war inside Russian territory, have also begun to deeply shake the balances on the active battlefield. This decision taken by the Moscow administration, which had to withdraw troops from many regions due to heavy losses in Kursk, led to the formation of very serious security vulnerabilities for Russian forces in these regions. With the decreasing manpower, ammunition stocks and weapon systems have started to become the target board of the Ukrainian army, and the fact that the Russian forces have continued their offensive attempts despite all this bad progress has made everything even more confusing. Turning the unstable and irregular mobility of the Russian forces into an opportunity, the Ukrainian Defense Forces have once again shared with the whole world that they will not give up their territory together with the simultaneous operations they have organized in the Donetsk and Kherson regions. The occupying Russian forces have begun to use Grad multi-barrel rocket launcher systems intensively in Donetsk and Kherson in order to facilitate offensive attempts and break the Ukrainian defensive line. However, although their attacks gave effective results, these heavy weapon systems, which were caught in the target detection of the Ukrainian army as soon as they were used, were subjected to attacks by the Ukrainian Defense Forces in the first week of October. The images shared via the Telegram account of Sternenko, who is known to have connections with the Ukrainian security services, showed that the Ukrainian army first targeted the Russian rocket launcher system in Donetsk. During the attack, which used FPV model kamikaze drones, which caused a huge echo on the agenda of the whole world due to their recent intensive use in the victories they achieved. The Grad multi-barrel rocket launcher system mentioned above was waiting for the south of the village of Novoselivka Persha, connected to Donetsk. The crew of the rocket launcher system, who were completely unprepared for Ukraine's counterattacks, literally woke up to a nightmare in the face of the hit of the FPV model kamikaze drone. The huge explosion created by the direct hitting drone caused the system to surrender to flames in a cloud of smoke within seconds. After the attack, in which the Russian crew responsible for the command of the weapon system was neutralized, the Grad multi-barrel rocket launcher system turned into a large wreck. After the images recorded by a drone belonging to the Ukrainian Defense Forces, it turned out that a similar operation was organized in the Kherson region. Having detected another Russian Grad multi-barrel rocket launcher deployed in the Kherson region, occupied by Russian forces, the Ukrainian Defense Forces managed to prevent possible destruction and enemy attacks in the future by intervening instantly. In the operation images shared by the 140th Marine Reconnaissance Battalion of the Ukrainian Marine Infantry via Facebook, it was seen that artillery units were activated alongside FPV drones this time. The Ukrainian 140th Marine Reconnaissance Battalion, which also included a written statement about the operation next to the video, said, "In the Kherson region, our soldiers destroyed the Russian BM-21 model Grad multi-barrel rocket launcher system using artillery and attack aircraft." In the later stage of the video, which shows the moments when the BM-21 model Russian weapon system deployed in a large wooded area was in motion, it was noted that the vehicle in question was completely destroyed as a result of the attack suffered. Immediately after a very large explosion, a large number of rockets integrated into the vehicle were launched erratically. In addition to the vehicle that surrendered to the fire that occurred immediately after these developments, indicating that the aforementioned vehicle was preparing to fire against Ukrainian positions, the troops responsible for the vehicle were also neutralized. The Telegram channel War Archive stated that the Russian Grad multi-barrel rocket launcher system was destroyed east of the village of Chelberda on the left bank of the Kherson region. One of the biggest reasons why the airstrikes conducted by Ukraine have given such accurate results has been the recent operations against Russian air defense assets. The Ukrainian army, which has made much more strategic moves targeting Russian radar systems, such as the Nebo-M, before conducting large-scale airstrikes, thus makes it impossible to detect or stop the airstrikes they will organize in advance. Compared to the Ukrainian army, the Russian army, which is focused only on destruction and progress, and conducts airstrikes contrary to the international law of war, cannot go beyond becoming the focus of criticism around the world for not identifying strategic targets. Not content with condemning Russia, Western countries, however, continue to provide support to improve Ukraine's air defense capabilities and mobilize for Kiev's victory. In this process, one of the last critical supports for Ukraine came from Romania. The Bucharest government, which adopted the draft law for the transfer of Patriot model air defense systems to Kiev last month, managed to deliver a great deal of support to Ukraine during the most critical period by keeping its supply promise within a short period of time. Thursday, October 3rd, Constantin Spinu, spokesman for the Romanian Ministry of Defense, said in a statement that they had confirmed that the Patriot model air defense system in question had reached Ukraine. Immediately after Spinu's announcement, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who conveyed his thanks in a post via X, said, "I thank every country that has helped us in air defense. I would especially like to thank Romania for the Patriot systems. Together we can achieve a greater efficiency. We can put an end to Russian aggression by acting together to shoot down Russian Shahed attack UAVs and missiles." As you may remember, in the last week of September, U.S. President Joe Biden also announced a very large support package. In a statement made during the visit of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, President Biden announced that more than $8 billion in military aid will be provided to Kiev. Joe Biden, who met with press reporters ahead of his meeting with Zelensky, said, "We make it clear that we are on Ukraine's side now and in the future." The support package, which will include additional air defense systems, the type of ammunition to be used in air-to-ground attacks, and guided bombs called Joint Standoff, which will be supplied to Kiev for the first time ever, will also cover materials and maintenance costs that will allow Ukraine to develop its local defense industry. Underlining the increase in security assistance to Ukraine, U.S. President Joe Biden also guaranteed that they would take a number of extra actions to help Ukraine win this war. At the same time, Joe Biden stated that the training of Ukrainian fighter pilots who will use F-16 model fighter aircraft will continue within the framework of improvements. Joe Biden said that 18 more pilots will be trained within the next year. Expressing his gratitude to President Joe Biden and the U.S. Congress for the new military aid package they have provided, and stating that they will use this support in the most effective and transparent way, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said, "I am grateful to the United States for providing the most critically important materials to protect our people." The Kyiv administration, which continues by strengthening its contact with the Western Bloc countries, continues to acquire much more critical military capabilities on the active battlefield every day and successfully conduct the self-defense struggle. However, unlike Ukraine, the Kremlin administration, which is now having difficulty getting the support it wants even in the Eastern Bloc, may reach the point where it will not even be able to provide border security, let alone to continue the offensive and invasion attempts, if the process continues like this.